Finley on Rama Road last month. It was on, I think Tanya, you talked about it, or Rick, it was on your agenda item about the person who was, help me out here, Chris, was selling their home, and they were trying, and they needed to get a dye test. They worked through their realtor. The realtor said, go get a plumber to do it, and the plumber did it, and they thought that they passed, and without realizing that we had our own requirements, we had to use Pcsa to do that. So long story short is the woman had to pay twice for the dye test. I think $200.
That's wrong.
One.
150. Right. Yeah. So at our meeting last month, it was like Chrissy. I think we asked you to go and investigate. You know, since you're in that realty business, to talk to the realtor to see, like, you know, did she just tell the client, you know, go get a plumber, or did she have to call someone in Union Township, or what? And so, you know, do you have any?
Sure. She did call. She doesn't know who she spoke to over there. That would have been great if she did, but she doesn't. The realtor was the one that called, not the seller.
Called Union Township.
Correct. And she was told, you know, hire your own plumber and go ahead and do it. And that's what happened. And then you all know what happened after that. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of confusion because there's different rules for different parts. And so maybe.
Well, Union Township has 4 watersheds, 4 or 5
That's the
watersheds,
problem.
so.
Yeah. But she didn't know exactly who she spoke to, Chris.
Yeah, so is there something, should we do any follow-up of that or not? Because we were talking about maybe writing a letter back to Union Township and to the realtor and to the person to say that.
Yeah. So the realtor had asked if the seller could be refunded by us.
What are you looking at me for? I didn't sign it. I don't know what you're talking about.
So you were at the last meeting. I'm looking at you because if you remember, when we talked about this before, you had wanted to know who they talked to.
Right.
And so I'm not looking at you and accusing you of anything. I'm just
Right.
looking at you because you're from Union Township, are you not?
Yes, I am.
So am I.
I know. I'm looking in both your directions just because it would be super helpful in going forward that people that are selling their house aren't charged twice. So if we, you know, the whole purpose for us to be here is for us to have open communication and to save people money and not have to pay something twice.
We've
So
gone through this eye test before. Mr. Kovacs, I think, will agree with you on it.
Yeah, I think what I suggesting anyway, if anybody thinks, I think we should write a letter to them. And if anybody calls it, and again, Chrissy, realtors get confused, they call it township. But if you call it township and they look up the service area, and if it's in Peters Creek, give them the Peters Creek number. If it's in El Rey, that's as simple as that.
But we did, as far as the supervisor at the time, they put a list when somebody came in. Okay, here's a checklist you gotta go through. As far as the dye test, you know, it should be on that list. So if somebody comes down to the township, you hand them a list. They gotta get this permit, that permit, they gotta get a dye test by Peters. Okay?
Yeah, if they find out it's in our service area, that's just as simple as giving us our number. That's all we gotta do. So if we write a letter that way.
I think I'd letter to Union Township just reminding them that if it's in our service area.
Yeah.
Right.
So Mr. Brenning, if someone was having this problem in Nottingham and we were all talking about this and someone was looking in my direction, I would not be offended. I would probably call Nottingham to try and rectify this so it doesn't continue happening. Simple as that.
What justice executive meeting?
I have a recommendation.
Executive session.
I have a recommendation that if there's any way to contact back to your township, we understand they have a website. What might help them out and their people is a website
I
picture
agree.
showing the map that says, if you live in this area, here's what you do. If you live in this, because as I understand it, supposedly the people answering the phone might not be the most knowledgeable people who know everything about it, but if they get a call that says, hey, dye test, they can remember, oh, we've got all that information on the website,
Yeah.
and it says, this quadrant, you call that number. Here you do, and it would spell out to anybody in the public who wants to find out what's the true answer. Realtors could go to that, see the current info,
Well,
just a suggestion.
I don't know who she could have talked to, down there, to be honest with you.
Well, there's only
That's a
two
great
employees.
suggestion.
I think there's only 2 parties. Yeah, so
So there's 2 people there. you know?
mistakes happen, we get that. It's just we're trying to be proactive so that, you know, to help educate.
Because this isn't the first time.
Well, we have Michelle here. Michelle, do you think that we could get Union Township to tell the employees or put something on the website that if someone calls for a dye test that's in the PCSA service area that, they'll be referred to PCSA, I mean,
And that's what I was actually doing, I was looking at our own website to see what it says to do. And I was writing a note to see if I could, maybe add it to
And
the
actually, if they don't
agenda.
know, if they don't
and get some
know,
more
if the
information.
person
I mean,
has
it'll
to vote
save
on
us,
this.
save us both, it'll save both us and Union Township problems, because you've got a homeowner that's trying to get somebody to pay her back for the double dye test, you know.
And since we are limited staff there, any information that's on the website would even save the phone call to the secretary. If it's just on here, they would never make the phone call in the first place.
I will say this, Michelle, most realtors call the municipality. It's just the quickest thing to
it's
do.
quick.
They call the
It
municipality.
is
that's
complicated
why.
with the with the different watersheds and the Washington County Storage Council, WESA, you guys, so, it took me a year to come in here and realize it all myself, so.
And the websites are notorious for being behind. So even though something might happen today, on the website it's telling you to do this, it could be completely different story. So that's why it's just best to go to the source, which is the local municipality, and, we're
And the
having a
website does
communication.
list the different, authorities, it just doesn't really specify who's where.
Right.
It does list the
That
three
is-
authorities.
That I just pulled up on their website,
Yeah.
so it does separate it out.
If
Oh,
I
but
was
they
a-
don't know where their house is.
If I was a homeowner and I was looking at a map, I could pretty well distinguish,
And that's
all right, here's this ridge road, and I live on that side of it.
But I can also understand Ms. Cole's comment in that if I was a realtor, I would just pick up the phone and call the township.
Yeah.
You're going to take the quickest route, which is to call the
But if the
township.
person answering the phone says, I need you to check the website, here's the address,
Yeah.
uniontownship.org, and they have to go do it anyway, next time they'll just skip that step of calling, they'll just go straight to the website, which has got supposedly, hopefully, current info.
Okay, I think that,
All right,
all good.
suggestions.
So, Mr. Kovacs, just another friendly reminder that, traffic event will occur.